thoughtful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and
All the countries and
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us perhaps here for the first time for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we can be found now on Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m., Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, in the top of the hour, let me thank you for your thoughtful calls, emails, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired here on HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, but particularly your great ideas for guest topics and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show here on HCC TV, now proudly in its 26th season. We have a great show planned for you today. We're going to look at an aspect of the future that is also now of the present. It is how we begin to collect data, how we do things collaboratively, how we make best use of who we are as human beings in service to other human beings and do it more efficiently, how we address the issue of our collective future together, and how we do it with technology that aids us to all do a better job of helping and serving, a better job of utilizing the resources to get where they need to get when they need to get there, and to be able to be more impactful, therefore, in the delivery of goods and services, be it time, talent, people, or treasure. So the question becomes, how do you do that? Well, we're lucky to have a young man here who is an entrepreneur who kind of figured this all out. He's none other than Ryan Alexander Thomas, the founder and CEO of, you gotta love this name, Umanity, because it is all about our common humanity going forward. And humanity right now needs a little touch-up. It could use a little boost. It could use a little positiveness. Welcome, Ryan.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And if he looks familiar, he's been on once before when he first put this thing together. It was just a seed, a germ of an idea that has now just blossomed.
Yeah, so we started the company a few years ago, and it was really simply just to be a volunteer platform. So we put together this idea, in the wake of Harvey, is that let's just make it easier for people to volunteer. But even though that did some help, it ultimately didn't get at the root of the issue, as we discussed before, which is we have so many platforms out there right now that get volunteers, that get money and other things like that, but we aren't actually connecting the needs to the resources. We're not getting any better at that, which is why we have inefficiencies such as half of donated clothes and food going to waste, 76 cents for every dollar donated being spent on administrative costs and not the actual needs. So me and my team, we went back to the drawing board and said, how can we fix that? And what we did is we created a platform that allows any resident to say, this is exactly what I have, or this is exactly what I need, and now allow organizations to create projects, events, and all these overarching goals centered around the dynamic needs and resources, thus reducing their inefficiencies, their waste, their learning cycles and logistics by over 90%. So now we can get waste to under 4%. Now we can get 94 cents for every dollar donated going directly to the needs and not to random administrative costs. And we've just now graduated from the ION Smart City Accelerator. We're excited to work with many aspects in the city of Houston, the Complete Communities Initiative, the resiliency effort, the homeless population, so that we can start bridging these gaps and start moving together forward collaboratively.
So the value opportunity here is we don't have to wait for another disaster. We can be proactive. We can do the connections ahead of time so that when something happens, we're already prepared to act.
Exactly. One of the main problems we see is that every time there's a hurricane, there's going to be people that say, I need this, I have this. You're going to find some random services crop up. You're going to find people that have been in the game longer saying, hey, we've been doing this whole time. And you're going to find many organizations, city officials, agencies, nonprofits, canvassing the same individuals over and over. They're fatigued. We don't have the system in place to know when something goes wrong, this is what we need to do, because we only think of community engagement when it's time for a hurricane. But people don't realize that the nonprofits that serve you during a hurricane are the same ones that actually do things all year long.
round, yeah.
We need to be thinking about this now and be more proactive pre-disaster risk mitigation
Right.
versus reactive, as in trying to figure out who's got what when, so that when we have a hurricane or an explosion in a certain part of town, we don't have email chains with 40, 50 people figuring out where are the volunteers, where's the money, who has canned goods, things like that.
So we're really trying to bridge the disconnect.
Absolutely. There's a lot of discrepancies in the city of Houston, and it's not uncommon
Right.
to any other industrialized nation. What we found is that the resources exist within the communities, and the resources exist within the surrounding areas in order to satisfy all the needs. But what hasn't happened before is a way to efficiently connect all these needs to resources. So duplication of efforts, it happens everywhere. You have waste everywhere, and that's what we're trying to do, is eliminate.
And why do you think we ended up being so bad at doing this thing called service and doing it the right way? Did it evolve over time because of silos? Did it evolve over time because everybody wanted to do their own thing? Did it evolve over time because there's mistrust among the various agencies doing stuff?
I think
or a combination of the above?
Well, I think you touched on a lot of them, which is everyone, when the philanthropic sector, really started, in the, early 20th, late 19th century, you had people for the first time that had enough and said, well, now we can start doing things for others. And everyone can't do everything, right? You have to
Right.
kind of pick a lane.
Right.
So inherently, silos crop up because I'm taking care of these particular people with this particular problem. But two things happen from that. One is that you're probably not the only person that's trying to do that. So there comes that duplication of efforts, which then leads to waste, because not every shelter needs the same canned goods. Not every shelter needs toys. Some need gas carts for people, other services like that. But then another thing happens where you have the Messiah complex come in, where some people think, well, we know what's best for the community, and the citizens don't actually have a voice in saying, well, if you're going to put $10 million in my neighborhood, this is how we want to spend it. These are our needs.
We don't engage the communities.
Exactly. So those are some of the reasons that we're in where we are. But moving forward, we now have a way to make sure people aren't forgotten. We have to keep in mind that when we're trying to do things for the community, very often the people we want to help actually know what's best for them.
I think we're getting better at engaging communities and having those community dialogues, but for a long time, and people will tell you this in those various communities across the city, they begin to feel like they were acted upon from an institutional racism standpoint or from a paternalistic standpoint by everybody coming into their community neighborhood knowing what's best or better for them, never engaging them, and as you said, many times pouring resources, lots of money into projects that's not what they needed. What they needed was X, but you wanted to give them Y because you were determined that this is what they needed, and so you found the money to do it. And so the question I think that this allows to happen is to really talk about what are the community resources, which is human beings, time, talent, and treasure, and touch, and how do we best utilize those community resources for this community, for this neighborhood, for this block.
Exactly. And I think we start with that, with first understanding where are the needs?
Mm-hmm.
What do people need? We're not going to go out door to door canvassing, that type of thing, because every time we start that canvassing project, by the time we make it all the way around and finish, the data is old. We need to have a system that can understand community and query the community in a large capacity so that we have relevant, up-to-date information. That's the first thing. Second is, where are the resources, where are the assets? How do we bring that information together? And then once we have those, we can start moving forward with connecting the two and bridging those gaps.
How much of this has to do with poverty?
A lot of it has to do with poverty and the impoverished communities, because when you're looking at needs, it's not always people that are in poverty. Mm-hmm. You have some people that simply need, some assisted living. You have organizations that when they want to transition people, from temporary housing or permanent, they need just someone to take them to work, job training, other things like that. When you have even looking at after-school activities. You have retired music teachers that want to teach kids, or you want to have a Little League game. Very often, the philanthropic events and things we want to do require a lot more than just money and time. They require
Right.
a lot of other resources that the community is willing to give and able to give, but there's no way to really aggregate that and have persistent information on what needs to be done, who's doing what, and where can I get in, where I fit in.
And this shouldn't be a threat to any existing agencies or organizations. This is just better utilization of who and what they are to fulfill their own mission and purpose.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at the software most organizations use, it's something to get money, something to get events, and then something to get the word out.
Right.
And there's no intersection between all of those. So if there was a place where organizations could say, I'm going to help this person, and then we can automatically calculate what they need, what the economic impact is of that, and then get that message out there and allow people to then contribute in real time, that's how we're saving people so much time and money.
So as this platform launches, with any new endeavor as an entrepreneur, there's a space in place now for people to be involved, to contribute, to help fund the organization in the beginning. So, but this early buy-in of understanding the concept and therefore having ownership of the concept becomes very important, because you make a very good value proposition about what this can do, not only in the short term, but if once it grows and expands, what it really can do in the long term, and how it can serve this whole community in a very diverse, bifurcated, segregated community. It can really help bridge and bring the community together.
It's really about helping people understand where are the food deserts, where are the childcare
Right,
deserts, where are the job training deserts, what do we need to be doing, who are we not serving, and how can all these organizations start working together? Because again, many organizations are trying to do the same thing, they're trying to target the same problems. And it's frustrating when you have waste on the same street where you have people that are without resources.
And that happens.
It
Literally on the same block sometimes.
Exactly. And that's because, again, when you're looking at how the sector works, we as individuals are all looking to them, say, hey, help me, please help me.
Right,
You know,
right.
people are looking at FEMA as a first responder.
Right.
But we don't actually know that it's our neighbor that we could be helping and we could be getting resources from.
And this cuts through a lot of governmental stuff, because this is really neighbor helping neighbor, community helping community.
Exactly.
We're going to take a small pause and break. When we come back, we're going to dive more into this value proposition and how this really works in expanding it to the larger community. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
This is Mac. She's ready to build herself a house and a business. But first, she's building her resume with a construction certification from Houston Community College. HCC, for everyone, anytime.
Julie was always a voracious reader. She'd carry 2 novels on an airplane because she'd read one on a 3-4 hour ride. And at some point, I began to notice that she would read a page and couldn't remember what she had just read, and she'd have to go back and read it again.
I don't remember much these days after I read, but less does for me, and I love it.
One of the things I love about Ryan Alexander Thomas, the founder and CEO of Umanity, if you've been with us for the first part of the show, we talk a lot about technology. We talk about the pluses of technology, how technology can help in service. Well, this is putting technology to the service of human beings, to the service of humanity, to do a better job of what instinctively so many human beings want to do, help and serve their fellow human being. But this makes it productive, makes it possible in a way that really makes sense, makes it a bigger bang in return for investment of what we're trying to do. It helps human beings really get to the help they need, the services, the things they need in a very proactive way. Part of that begins with asset mapping. Part of that value proposition is to really do the asset mapping to understand what we have available to us and whom we have.
Exactly. When you look at some of the numbers where you have up to 90% of the community resources going unutilized or underutilized, it's no wonder that the average person just simply doesn't know where can they get help, which is why when you look at these organizations that say, well, we have all these programs, we're doing all these things, and it's like, well, do the people know about it? Are we able to act upon it? And and if I'm someone who doesn't need but wants to give, do I know how to contribute
And what
to
difference is it making? I mean, you got these programs, and yeah, you're serving these people, but is it actually changing lives? Is it actually making a difference in those human beings' lives?
It's one of the hardest things is to calculate that economic impact when you have case studies, from data from 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. Whereas that's why we've created a platform that we figure out where the assets are, so people are able to take action upon it directly, say, hey, I need this thing that you're doing, we need that in our neighborhood. So now you can also hold the organization accountable, so now that people know, hey, we've asked for this. But then more importantly, you now can say, this is what we know works. We now have the data to say, when we did this for the community, here was the economic impact. This is how many needs were satisfied, and this is now what the community looks like after this.
So let's turn this whole model toward homelessness. How can this impact and affect a better delivery of services to the homeless?
So I had an interesting conversation with the CEO of Coalition for the Homeless, Mike Nichols, this morning. And he was telling me some very interesting things about how people look at homelessness. And one of the things that's very often forgotten is that homelessness isn't just people on the street. It's people that just got in temporary housing or permanent housing that still need services. And the reason a lot of people return to the streets is because there's no way for people to say, I just got this temporary housing, I just got a cell phone, they got pots and pans in a house, but I don't have money for food. I don't have that sense of community. I don't have the other services or medication.
I don't have even transportation.
Exactly. All these other things that are missing that neighbors would love to support, love to serve. Volunteers would love to support, love to serve. But we don't know who these people are. 5,000 of these individuals are in this temporary housing right now. How do we help them? We give money to the organizations, but the organizations are dealing with their own bottlenecks that don't allow the resources to get there. We have to start connecting people with each other in a safe way, making sure that it is secure. But when it's available, that connection should be made.
So all these, let's just use for example, all these houses of worship, church, parish, temple, synagogue, and mosque, doesn't really matter, who want to do something, some of whom are doing something, but want to do more, but feel frustrated because they don't see a place and a role for them to play that they can be effective and really do something. This is a way to kind of help coordinate all of that.
Exactly. So when you have a homeless encampment or a homeless population in an area, you're very often seeing them next to the shelters, where the shelters might have some regulations, say, oh, you must have certain practicing religion, you must sobriety, these other checks. But really what the population needs are basic food, water, showers, and things like that, which these organizations could provide. So a church can go on Umanity and say, look, we're willing to provide church, we're willing to provide food, we're willing to provide showers, we're willing to provide clothes, job training, so on and so forth. And now you can have profiles for these individuals to say, here are the services that we're going to be doing here. Now in real time, we know exactly what needs to be done. And the homeless population very often, sometimes doesn't have cell phones. So you can still allow organizations to go out there and say, these are the individuals they can create.
But we need you here, not over here, not where you think the need is over here. We need you here.
Because we're able to leverage the data that's collected, which is homeless population here, underserved neighborhood, people that are at risk of housing and temporary housing. We know these things. It's not up to every organization to figure it out on their own. there's people that know exactly who needs what, where, and when, but the information isn't shared.
Right.
We're not able to take action upon it together. So now we have a platform that allows the coordination of millions of individual actions towards these large common goals.
So obviously embedded in this is a great call to action to the community. What does that look like?
So right now we are looking for interns. We are reaching out to several high schools in the city of Houston because we do want a lot of people involved in this, you know, especially at a young age so they can see the impact that they can make on the community.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we are expanding our company because we are taking on more services within the city of Houston. So we are looking for people, the community leaders especially, that are involved and want to say, hey, we know exactly where the services need to go. We know where the services exist. As we talked about earlier, a big part of this is asset mapping.
Right.
So if you are somebody that has space, you're in charge of a church, food bank, you know, shelter, whether it's you have a CPA, you have CPR training. If you want to give back to your community in some capacity, we would love to hear from you and make you a part of the humanitarian network.
Okay. So is there, for lack of a better word, a community event coming up or a community gathering where we can give the clarion call to quote unquote community leaders in various segments of our communities to come together and basically, you know, I've been with you enough now, sitting with you at, over breaking bread together for breakfasts or whatever. I've talked to people who you've talked to who gets it, who understands it. But to give you an opportunity and a space to present it to a larger number of people who hear it the same way, the same time, the same place, from you yourself, not from one of the people who are trying to interpret what you're trying to do, because it loses some, trust me, it loses something in the translation, and I've tried. But it becomes very important, I think, because this seems, from everyone that I've talked to who've heard your presentation, it is truly the right thing at the right time in the right place to put into effect. And Houston is really the right city for all the givens of who we are. But we need to figure out how to, as you said, to maximize that, and now's the time.
Exactly. So we are going to be doing rollouts in 3rd Ward, Midtown, downtown, and near North Side within the next few months. So be on the lookout.
Okay.
If you go to the website umanity.io, we are going to be talking about the dates for the community engagement events, so people can learn exactly
Right.
how do I get, where do I fit in, and what can I do to help. And also, I need help. Where are the resources?
Right.
So we would love to help all these people.
And of course, donations are accepted at any time to help the work.
Absolutely, but we would rather give the donations to these organizations.
Okay.
We want to make sure that the people that have the needs are the ones that are getting the resources. So for us, if you can help us find where other needs
channel
are,
it.
where other resources are, we would love to help make those connections and bring humanity to your neighborhood.
So in this wonderful idea of humanity and helping our common humanity together, as we go forward with this, not only your platform and humanity, we need to figure out a way. This is a caring community. It always has been. This is a philanthropic community. It always has risen to the occasion. But it seems also, when you step back and analyze a lot of what's been done and the money raised for certain causes and issues, if you're really honest, the bang for the buck, the return on an investment, in many areas have been very weak. Mm-hmm. In some cases, we have even asked them to give us data and statistics and what has been done. This gives you a chance to do all of that. At the same time, be able to maximize and match the things that needed to be matched in a very clear way so that the data is not suspect, the trust is there of the data, and then how you use it is really a much better way to maximize everything.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we really are about that economic impact and the needs that are satisfied, reducing waste, reducing inefficiencies. Yeah. So that's why over the next 2 months, we are going to be working with the aforementioned neighborhoods near Northside,
Right.
3rd Ward, Midtown, and downtown to start looking at where are these needs, where are the resources, and we're going to be rolling out there first so that we can eventually expand to the rest of the city of Houston, East Harris County, and other parts of the greater Houston area, because Houston is that city that if not Houston, then where?
Exactly.
If Houston is subjected to
Yeah.
places of poverty. We're incredibly disaster prone. Entire state of Texas is,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to figure out a way to get better. It's not going to get any better on its own, and we believe technology plays an important role in servicing without losing the human connection, without losing the fact that this is person to person. We're trying to help each other.
Right.
But a computer can think a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so we're not able to aggregate all that information on our own. We need a bit of help to ease those bottlenecks so more good can be done, the trust can be built, and we can move forward as a people.
One of the places I see also it has a great possibility to be a very effective tool is this in the area of education. When we look at the mentors and tutors we need to be able to match the schools, the mentors and tutors, the retired people who want to do something but don't really know what they can do or how they can help, to be able to really have that cadre of people who want to be involved, who understand that it's really all about unconditional love, giving and receiving unconditional love, who want to be involved in the process of urban public education to bring back some of the things that they grew up with in schools as they knew it. This is a great way to connect those people.
Exactly. And again, a part of it is just awareness. Some people simply don't know what is needed out there. People didn't know that their neighbor needed something. People didn't know that someone on the other side of town needed something. So for the first time, you can open up an app and see what are the pressing needs of the community, my city, my state at large. And I only have this resource to give. I can't solve everything.
Right.
But I'm a retired teacher. I want to help someone. I want to do some tutoring. We can show you exactly where you would maximize your impact.
So everybody can do something.
Absolutely.
This helps you understand what that something is and where you can be most effective. And do it in a way that's really, I think, the backbone of Houston. We're beginning to do more of this proactively. I think the proactive piece is very important. I think we've backed into some of the issues we're having to deal with because we haven't been proactive. We haven't been forward enough thinking in trying to read, as they used to say, the tea leaves of knowing what's coming to predict some of this stuff. And we've gotten kind of, I won't say it malaise, but we've gotten kind of comfortable.
Gotten used to fighting fires.
Used to fighting fires, putting out brush fires, yeah. It's like the old thing about a hammer. If you're a hammer, you only know one thing, and how to nail a nail, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for the nail every day, rather than looking for solutions. Ryan, we're out of time. Believe it or not, it goes so quickly with you. Go to the website, umanity.io, and begin to really understand how this process works. Go to the website and check out when these listening sessions, community forums will be in the 5 areas and neighborhoods that Ryan mentioned. Come and participate, see a live presentation, et cetera, but also get to interact with your neighbors, get to interact with your community. You know, you never know who's going to show up in those rooms. You get to make new friends. You get to develop new relationships. You get to understand what people from other parts of town not only are facing, but what they're doing in service to other human beings. And that becomes part of more and more who we are as Houstonians under this broad banner of what it means to have a humanity kind of outlook on how we approach and address these issues going forward. So we look forward to you taking advantage of and availing yourselves of humanity and utilizing the resources in a great creative way. We have to get out of here for now, so we look forward to you joining us in future segments of Dialogue Houston. Until then, as always, peace, power, and love.